Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Retro Chat. Today we are joined by Thorbjørn Lindejier, if that is correct. I'm sorry. I tried to look it up.
Lindejier. Yeah.
So Bjorn is the creator and maintainer of Tiled, which is what we're mostly going to be talking about today. Today's episode is recorded live at twitch.tv/RetroMMO, of course, as always. But yes, Tiled. It is a very popular open source map editor, and I've used it myself, which is part of the reason that I was interested in talking to Bjorn. I use it for my MMO game. I've used it for a side project actually as well. I use it for a little game jam game, but yeah, I use it for my main project, which the MMO. So I do open Tiled on a pretty daily basis. But yeah, Bjorn, would you want to just start off by telling us who you are? Just introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I am, of course, the maintainer of Tiled, but I have had, from being a child, an interest in games and then game development, programming, and especially I liked role-playing games. So immediately when I started to make the first role-playing game, I had to write also an editor for editing maps. And that's why I ended up developing Tiled as well, but it's already the fourth editor for this type of game that I wrote. First I wrote one in Quick Basic, which is the first programming language I encountered. And then when I got into C++, I wrote a new one, Allegro, and then I collaborated with another guy, Adam Turk, whom I met on RPGDX, the RPG programmer community, which I was running back in 2004. And we collaborated on a Java version. The goal was to make it very flexible, that everybody could use it for their own game, no matter what the tile size was or their number of layers. Yeah, and so eventually I finished studying. I started to work at Trolltech and got to know Qt. And then, yeah, I liked it much better than Java, especially for its performance and cross-platform experience. So I wrote a new version, that's current Tiled, 14 years ago or 12 years ago. I'm not exactly sure now. But yeah, slowly, it took like a year until it was kind of the same as the Java version. And then after many more years, kept adding features partly because I needed it for my game projects, the Mana world, like similar to RetroMMO, but it's a different style of game. It was more targeted like Secret of Mana style, real-time combat. Yeah, and there were other people starting to use Tiled in their projects. So since then, I'm just kept adding features to Tiled. I'm not sure. Now I'm just talking about Tiled
Oh no,
history.
you're good. I mean, no, that's a great backstory. Clearly, you have a very large history with building map editors. It sounds like how old were you when you built that first one?
Uh, it was 2000 or so 22 years ago. I was 18.
I see. So you started out, you built something that was very specific to the needs of whatever game you were trying to make, and as time went on, you got more and more interested in building something a bit more general purpose that a lot of people
Yeah,
could use.
the first version was definitely specific to my engine as well. And then another one with Allegro, we also had our own engine, and then the other is with the Java version, it started to be like independent. We had since then the XML format, which is then very easy to parse for everybody. And yeah, then it decoupled from engine, and other people choose it.
Well, clearly, it's a product that has provided a lot of value to a lot of people. I mean, when back then, you're talking about you're 18, you're building your own map editors and things where I'm guessing were there not like a lot of options for you to use as far as things that other people had already built? Was everybody just
No.
making their own editors for every game they made? Like what's
Yeah, yeah, there were a
essentially?
lot of games like for the Super Nintendo and also for PC that, of course, use tile maps. It's a very popular way to do tiles, and there were some editors, I guess, but I definitely didn't know about them. I don't think there were any like open source ones yet. Before Tile, there was a few others that were also kind of free, but they were usually for only for Windows. and maybe also not open source. So I couldn't just use it. It was not generic enough.
Yeah, typically having a good open source option for any sort of tool that is involved in software, there needs to be at least one. There needs to be at least one good open source.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, so I mean, and Tile's been around for a while, right? Like 10+ years, we're talking, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like I guess there probably wasn't too much competition back then, huh?
No,
How long did
really.
it start to take before others were popping up?
It's recently, I think there's been a few very good ones. So we see, on Itch, there were used to be like Tiled as the main editor, and now you find a few of them, and some of them have really interesting features. So I'm also keeping a bit of an eye on this because I think it's also a good inspiration to see where we can also improve Tiled further.
Yeah.
So, and other than that, they target maybe a different style of game or a different use case, and maybe it's good to have a few more options out there.
Right, yeah. There's all kinds of different types of games. No tool is going to be truly perfect for all
Yeah,
of them, but you aim to be one that is pretty good for most of the general use cases. And
yeah,
it sounds like you got in really early and just dominated, just got all the market share before anybody else was even trying, is what it seems like.
yeah. The history is also like a baggage, right? Every change I want to make now affects everybody's projects, so
Hmm.
it can't break compatibility. In general, I try to not break compatibility when it's not necessary. Yeah, and it's becoming harder to add more stuff because you have to always take into account all the existing functionality and how it ties into a feature. And there's a lot of things that could be better. That just it's difficult to improve with the structures that's already there.
Yeah. Are there a lot of things that you wish you could change, but you don't want to change them because there's so many people that are dependent on it not being that way? Like, is that a common problem you come across?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure about some examples now, but I only recently introduced like a project feature in Tiled. I think it's recent, but it's still like 2 years ago now. But
Yeah.
um, still, the project is basically still just a collection of files, and it's difficult to start doing more with the project because traditionally all these files are on their own. So the map file, the tiles, they are separate. I want to make the project more important. So far, I've also still supported the use case that you don't have a project because in traditionally you didn't have one, and I'm reluctant to force people to set up a project because that's now what I would like them to do. I think eventually it it will be necessary, or I will have still to keep a default empty project. Um, yeah, so this is one thing that's like complicated. You can't just introduce the feature and then make full use of it because it would have required people to start setting up stuff they need before, and you don't want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's really tough, especially when like a very mature project that already has a lot of users, for sure. I mean, all software has that problem, but it's got to
Yeah.
be, yeah, particularly tough for very established open source software. So I mean, you did mention at one point that you switched languages. You initially started in Java and you moved over to C++. Plus plus. You said you're using a framework. I mean, what was that experience like? Was that
This was a
transition?
very pleasant experience because
Yeah.
I really didn't like Java, especially not the UI framework. I was using Swing. It was really like a challenge. I mean, I was uh, a bit proud that I could, do the UI because it was considered very painful. I also found it painful. You had this grid back layout where you try to set all kind of constraints so that it kind of does what you want when you resize stuff. Um, and yeah, still that was just too painful. When I got into Qt, they had a very good designer which just visually plop things into place. And if in the cases where the UI needs to be more dynamic, it was very easy to set up the layout just with horizontal and vertical arrangements and the grid layout. Yeah, so nothing with these constraints that were hard wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
And by default, it looks like native. This was also much better. But programming language-wise, I was already familiar with C++, so yeah, this was not a big transition.
Gotcha. Did you already have a lot of users by that time? I mean, when did it really start getting popular?
With the Qt version actually only. So the Java version, it got a bit popular at the end because Cocos to the iPhone picked it up, and they added support for loading tiled maps. It was one of the first bigger frameworks.
Oh, wow.
Cocos to the iPhone also, it became very popular, somewhat unexpected, right? Because the iPhone was very popular phone for people to start building kind of retro games on again, right? The tile-based stuff. So they figured they needed to have also a tile editor, tiled map support. So they supported tiled format, making tiled more visible. Yeah, after that, other engines followed. But the Java version, I think it was also not very nice to use. I'm not really sure, but it only started to become popular when the Qt version replaced the Java version. It looked like a much more mature and solid application, probably also easier to use.
Yeah, man, it's I mean, UI was a UI was a very different world 10 years ago. Like, however, do you know what year exactly you first created the repository that we have today?
Yeah, 2008 is the current version of Tiles. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, yeah, and I know probably by now you have all kinds of engines that support tiled at this point, right?
What kind of what?
Oh, I was just saying, at this point, there must be all kinds of engines that support tiled by now. I mean,
yeah, there's a
first one.
list, yeah, and not just engines, your loaders, or sometimes they implement a whole renderer.
Yeah.
Of course, with I mean, there's dozens, if not libraries out there, and I tried them from the manual, so you can kind of find them. Of course, the problem is that they are usually because somebody wrote it. They need tiled support, and then they stopped the project, and tiled is moving on. It's gaining more features. So usually you pick up tiled and you make a map, and then you try to use it somewhere, and you run into some kind of unsupported feature or limitation. A very common one is that it will only render one tile set per layer, for example. Yeah, this is yeah, it's I try to be a bit in contact with people who are well maintaining their library. And recently I picked up the Rust library for loading tiles, looked for more maintainers and moved to the map editor organization. And this kind of guarantees that this library is first class supported. So the new features will be there. Yeah, and I hope we can do this with more libraries, maybe one for Python, one for JavaScript.
Yeah, it's really cool that you've gone from like you were telling me that's about the first time that you had like an organization like for their engine specifically support tiled, and now it's like there's just all kinds of random people just making third-party stuff, like I'm sure there's tons of like just random like JavaScript renderers, like WebGL renderers and things people may just just anyone people people that are just hobbyists, which is really cool as well, and which is of course kind of my project is closed source because it's just a commercial video game, but I've had to do essentially the same thing. I've had to build a renderer, and I've had to parse tile data for collision and such. My game's pretty simple. My game's like a lot like Dragon Quest, but just multiplayer, so there's not a lot of complexity to it. But, I do at least have some firsthand.
Yeah, when I added actually all these options, the idea I had was basically people write an engine. It renders maps in a certain way, and you would just create the map in tiles and figure it. You have the same kind of settings there, the tile size, isometric or not. You set it up there. So the idea was that your engine would not really change, right?
Yeah.
Tiled would adjust to the engine. But that means tiled got more features to support all kind of different use cases. And then it was kind of unintentional. people start to integrate tile support in their frameworks and in their libraries, and then they have to support everything that Tiles does. Right? Yeah, and collision shapes, all kind of features. And my idea was first like you just have to support the features that you want to use in your game, right? And you implement loading for those. But those people doing the frameworks, they have to support everything.
Yeah,
that's much more difficult.
that's hilarious, right? You're just like, oh, I'm gonna give you all these features, so the niche stuff is given to all the people that want it, and then everybody's like, no, I'm just gonna wrap the whole library. I'm just gonna wrap the entire
this Phaser framework, and then the Phaser guys have to implement all Tiles features.
Yeah.
But that's the way it ends up. That's why I think we need like more official support and more collaboration. Projects supporting tiled maps.
Well, I think that the way that you have tiled set up really does. I think you've achieved your goal. I think it matches the vision properly, because for people that do use it the way that I do, where it's like I just have my custom project, I'm just going to take what I need from it. It's a pretty clean experience. I mean, you got to be careful not to accidentally mess with settings and things that you don't support, and then you get like, your engine still compiles, but you got some messed up JSON data or something. But that's just sort of the nature of processing any sort of data.
Yeah.
I was curious though, like if
pen and paper.
Do people ever use tiled for games, and they use features in a way that is really odd to you, or like strange to you, the way that they decided to make use? For example, using a feature of tiled to implement a feature in a game that is unorthodox, not what you envisioned.
Usually also people try to make the level look like a game, which is fine, but I also see some people making the level with very abstract tile set or with abstract shapes. In the game it will look very different.
Yeah, I've seen some of that. There's a friend of mine who uses your product as well. I think you know him as well, Henry Thanks Games. He makes Aether Story, and he does a lot of custom auto tiling and a lot of custom scripting on his maps, but he doesn't do it using your scripting. He does it in his engine. So when you look at his tile maps, like when he opens it in tile, it's just like this ugly repeated tile over and over. But in the game, it's like perfectly auto-tiled. Is it very difficult to decide when a feature is something that should be added to the code base versus if it's something that should be handled by an extension?
I think it's difficult, but it's mostly because it's hard to, because it's subjective in a way. There's no single like system where people could vote or something what they need the most. And then apart from the need, it's still like, how can it be an extension, or does it have to be part of tiles? Okay, one thing to influence what I'm doing in tiles, right? To start the work.
Oh yeah.
It's the best way to prioritize the thing for me. If you open a pull request, then I tend to still start and help make the feature work.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you make. I mean, it's not even really just all about the philosophy of does it deserve to be a core feature versus an extension. I mean, you're one person maintaining the project, and you have to spend your hours on it, and you have like supporters and patrons and things like this. There's all kinds of like very human reasons for why certain things should be favored and certain things shouldn't. That makes sense. And that is your you do focus on this project almost full time, right? Because of the amount of support that you get. Right? It's been like 4 days out of the week, you said?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing since December actually just full time tiled. I'm not funded like full time yet, but very very close. It's close enough that I could quit my job at Ubisoft. I decided to just do it full time. And the plan was also to do a bit more fundraising. I haven't gotten around to it. I had a progress bar on the website. It's just told exactly what I was earning basically on the various like patron and sponsors, GitHub sponsors. And with the website redesign, it got lost, and I need to restore it. I'm just very bad at at websites. Well, I hate the websites. So yeah, but I should bring that back and try to actually reach the funding goal. What is working out very well is the monthly subscription. So getting somebody who uses Tiled to pay like $5 per month, that's helping a lot. So this is most of my income, the monthly donations. And then, of course, on every time you download Tiled, it also says you can pay what you want for this tool. And this is about like $1,000 per month from about 100 people. So they pay on average, the people who pay about $10. So normally this would not be enough to pay for the tool. I need, in addition to these people who are paying when they download Tiled, I'm still also depending on the monthly supporters. Yeah.
One thing that's really interesting about the way that you do it is you actually give people, you will prioritize features based off of how much money they've supported you on Patreon. Like, for example, the more money you spend, the more amount of hours. Like, you're essentially selling consulting work through your Patreon to some degree. Has it been a good experience?
It's not something that many people actually make use of somehow. But I tend to, in general, listen or be more proactive when somebody asks for a feature and I can see how they are supporting somebody who is supporting me. I will spend more time with them. Like what I wrote was like I spent 2 hours or 4 hours or 8 hours on a specific issue, but I never have to really keep track of these hours because there's nobody ever claiming their this kind of reward. I mean, it was just a test to put that in there to see if somebody would make use of it. I'm not sure still what works the best, like as a reward. But on the Discord, I can see who is a sponsor or a patron, and it's I tend to listen more to their requests. I'm not sure what else you asked.
Oh no, that was all. That's cool. I mean, that's good that it's working out that way for you. Because I mean, that's really like, and I mean, it's the same thing like when you work a salary position at a company. If you're really doing good work and like have a good level of trust, it's really more about the actual like results and the communication than it is the logged amount of hours. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool, and it's really cool that you've been able to go full time with it as well.
Yeah, in the past there were like moments where several people at the same time wanted to have a priority feature. So it was, I think, Tiled 1.2 release or so, which was totally driven by these priority requests. There were like 3 people who were paying $200 per month, and then they had their request. It was, I think, the world feature, for example, and multi-layer editing was one. I'm not sure. The third probably was like keyboard shortcuts. It was also not so easy to add it like after the fact. So at first, all the keys were of course hard coded, and then I had to make all the actions somehow registered somewhere and make the keyboard configurable. Yeah, but these things all went into 1.2 release, I think, and they were all based on these patrons that paid a bit more. Yeah, that paid a significant amount.
Gotcha. The worlds feature is one that is interesting to me in particular. I'll give a little bit of backstory for anybody that isn't familiar. But the Tiled has a world. They have world files, and the data that you put in world files allows you to link multiple tile maps together. But what's interesting about the world feature to me is that it's a feature that you added. You added support for the feature before you added an editor for the feature. And I was curious about what your, I guess, how do you determine whether a feature is worth adding like that or whether it needs to wait for UI?
Yeah. So I already mentioned this was a request, right, from a patron who paid like $200 per month. I would spend at least one day. I mean, usually I end up spending more time on this. And of course, doing a full-blown editor would take much more time, and this page didn't need it. So he or she was happy if I would just have the feature in there the way it was initially. So there was the pattern matching, so you could define the world file once, and you could add more maps, and you didn't even have to edit the world file. So an editor wasn't so necessary. It would derive the place of the map in the world from its name by just having the X and Y coordinate in the file name. It was what you could do. And then you could also manually define the location of each map, which is a feature I mainly added because I was also involved with the Mana worlds in the past, and their world didn't have any kind of structure like this. All the maps were like placed randomly in the world in a way, because the world grew so dynamically that there was no pre-made like plan. Just add a map here, add a map there, and yeah, and then they were connected through portals. So there were also like mistakes that you could only see once you added all these maps to the world, about the positioning of things in the various maps. Yeah, but then you could see also the entire world of the Mana world in one view, which was pretty nice. Yeah, but it was a few versions later that somebody actually did a pull request because they wanted to edit the world, and then I helped them finish this pull request, which added the world tool, which is not the way ideally I would want to have the world editor work, right? It was an easy way. Again, sometimes there just is only a limited amount of time, and doing this as a tool was sufficient. It worked, and it didn't take like huge amount of time to implement it like that.
Yeah, it's I mean that's as valid of a reason as any. You know, you had someone who you had a supporter who needed certain pieces of that feature, so you got them the pieces you need. I mean, every open source project operates this way to some degree. I mean, it's open source projects are a very community driven thing, but it seems that you've developed, like, with the way that you've set up things, and it seems like you've even more so than the average project, it seems like you've developed like a closer sort of relationship with the people that use your software. I think that's cool. But yeah, you were saying, so you do find yourself making sacrifices and accepting pull requests that aren't the way that you wanted them because they're good enough. Is that what you're getting at?
I make them good enough, yes.
Yeah, you make them.
But yeah, and sometimes that's just limited by the time I have for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. It's reasonable. So you were talking earlier about how your drive for making editors initially came from the games that you wanted to make. Would you want to tell us about some of the games that you've built and how they've impacted your views on building Tile?
Yeah, so I was really into making RPG games, and later on especially like multiplayer RPG games, because I want to see like a world where also other people walk around. I'm not much of a storyteller, so I can't really I don't know, make the content of a game very interesting. So the one thing to do is to bring other people in and just have a good time with other people playing a game. And making the game like based on some dynamics, for example, AI walking around and having some interesting things to do. So because this type of game was my target, Tiled also has some features that default to in a way that that is good for that type of game. Like the objects, they are automatically sorted on the y-axis by default. And of course, many people make a game where they want manually control over the order of the objects. And then they have to find this option to change the order to manual, and then they can reorder the objects, because we eventually implemented it. But it's somehow hidden because the default is different, right? And then you have to find it in the object layer properties. Yeah, and there's like, I'm not sure if there's more stuff like this. Yeah, there's also the objects. We had, for a long time, no object to mark a point, but we had a rectangle, and if you just placed a rectangle that had no size, it would basically function as a marker for a certain position, and it would render differently, but it still has a rectangle. And now people are getting confused because they place a rectangle with 0 size, and it has a size. It seems to have a size, but it's not really the way it works. So I have to revisit like a solution for this eventually. It's one thing I want to get around to change it, but it needs to be somehow backwards compatible again.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we have point objects, so maybe they should just be points then. Yeah.
It's difficult, and like with a project like this, you know, where it's like something that you've created yourself, something that you work on so much, I'm sure that like you must just be thinking about this stuff all the time, right? You know, it's like, do you have a good work-life balance, would you say?
Yeah, I think I still have a good work-life balance because my wife is basically enforcing it, I think. So I have a family. There's just no way I can spend time on Tiled at home, pretty much. So in the evening I can do some chatting or answer some issues, but in general I have time with my kids as well, and I usually just I'm actually working on Tiled at my office here. So. It's also because it's hard to concentrate at home that I have to rent an office nearby, and it also means I get some exercise, and it brings a better balance as well, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I mean, props to you. It's very difficult. I find it. I have a full-time job now, but I did spend a good year or so just doing like indie game dev, and it's very hard to keep yourself on a schedule. Like even for a project that you're passionate and motivated about, it's hard to be working on it at the same time for the same amount of hours each day and be consistently productive. So
Yeah, I'm
good on
definitely
you.
not consistently productive, so this is something I'm struggling with as well. And I very often don't end up doing what I plan to do. Yeah, because notifications come in, or
Yeah.
somebody suddenly has a question, or there's a discussion I find interesting, and so I'm always also struggling with this problem and trying to find a way to focus and get things done. Yeah,
Okay, well, it's good to hear. It's good to hear that someone who's doing it really well still has those, still
yeah.
deals with the same thing. Yeah, no,
Yeah. And for a long time, I was
definitely.
doing a job at Ubisoft and Tiled, and every week I was switching. So 3 days working for Ubisoft and then
Oh
two
wow.
days Tiled. And this was, in the end, also a pretty bad experience. So it was nice that I could do both things, but it led to, at least I felt like I was way less productive that I could be, because when I was at Ubisoft, I couldn't think of only their big projects, right? I had also the Tiled in the back of my mind. And when I had the 2 days for Tiled, they felt like not enough time. I couldn't do everything I wanted to do, and then I had to work for Ubisoft again. So it wasn't a nice experience. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to start like a small game project again. I was working on Source of Tales before, yeah, before I switched to really just working on Tiled. So this Source of Tales, I worked on it. Hmm? I think it's already almost 10 years ago, but I'm not sure. I can look it up, but it's been a while since we stopped working on that entirely. Yeah, it's 9 years ago.
Mhm.
Um,
Does it use
but this is
tiled?
also like the manual. It's an online RPG, but we focused on the mobile version
Yeah.
with the Qt-based client. And I really love this art style. We used the liberated pixel cup tiles. And yeah, I liked the focus on mobile and the smooth experience. Um, and yeah, because I would like to continue that project because I like I like
Yeah. Hey, making games is fun.
yeah.
Do you use tiled on all of your games that you've made in the last, you know, after you started on tiled?
Yeah,
Every single one of them?
I think so. I
Oh,
mean,
hey, that
on
means you
very,
made something good. That means you made something that's useful to you.
I did a small Lua game with my kids where you can jump around in a forest, but it's not using tiles, but it's not using tiled yet because we just hard coded some images. And the
Yeah.
next thing to do would be to add support for loading tiled maps, of course.
Wow, listen to that, everybody. The creator of Tiled uses a manually created image for his background in his game.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It was like a little game jam almost. Like I have barely any time. I have 2 hours on Sunday with my kids, and sometimes we try to put up a small game. I was happy that I got the jumping physics to in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's always really refreshing to take on a smaller side project as well when you spend your day to day just working on the same thing so much.
Yeah.
It's it's nice for sure. When is the last time that you did work on a game like that? How recently?
So the game is in the last month or so, but it's
Oh,
really a
nice.
little time I had for it. And then before that, I did a game jam with colleagues at work, where we also ended up using Tiled and Love2D. And yeah, before that, it was basically Source of Tales, which I was working on. Yeah, and which I would like to get back to sometime.
And it's going to be really cool to see, if you when you do put out a game that you're trying to put a lot of like marketing behind and you really want to like actually get some like sales, like Steam release type of game. It's going to be interesting. A lot of your fan base and your community from Tiled will probably come give it a shot just because you're affiliated with Tiled, just because they know you from there.
Yeah, it would probably be an open source project, right?
Yeah.
I'm not really into making a commercial game and release it on Steam. I'm also, I mean, I'm aware that it will take a lot of time. That much time I don't have. So I could do a collaborative project with some others who are also interested in making this. I need help with the content of the game, right? I'm very good at implementing editor and engine and networking functionality, but building actually interesting town with backstories, it's not really my thing. So
Yeah.
that's why I usually try to collaborate with other people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
collaboration is great. I've collaborated. I've never made a game truly by myself.
Hmm.
Um, have
Now,
you? I mean, you talk about like how you've made a million different map editors. And you've done all these things. You talk about your expertise in like programming these features. Have
yeah.
you ever used like any of the popular general purpose programming engines, or do you just always sort of roll your own stuff?
I've used Unreal once and Unity once, both in different game jams. Um, but I don't like the experience because they are huge, right? Unreal Engine, I had to use it on Linux because that's what I use, and then I first had to compile it, and it was huge to just get that thing compiled. And eventually it worked. And then we coded the logic of our game using these node graphs. So this is I'm not sure exactly how they call their scripting system, but it was based on dragging lines between boxes, right? And it's also what Ubisoft does with their modern engines, right? But I don't really like this approach to basically programming. I
Yeah,
would much prefer a scripting-based approach, which find much more readable approach to it. And Unity, yeah, I'm not sure. And I can't really remember what we did with Unity, but it's also not so small, right? It's also pretty big.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't remember what we did with Unity, but yeah, I'm not really into these engines. Also, Unity is not open source, so I have not much
Right.
with it. I tried out the super tiled to Unity extension
Oh yeah.
just to see if it works. I got it to work. Yeah, but it's not something I would base my game on. So yeah.
Gotcha. I'm out of curiosity. Do you like Super Tile Map Editor? That's what you're talking about, right? The
Yeah,
Unity
it's
assets.
a great. Would no, I didn't know Super Tilemap Editor. Is it also Unity?
Oh, I thought you were mentioning Super Tile. You're talking about the default Unity Tile Map Editor?
No, there is a project Super Tiled to Unity,
Super
which takes.
tiled. Oh, tiled to Unity. I see. A fan made project that someone made to
Yeah,
to be able to use tile maps in Unity. Yeah.
exactly. It's
I
very
would. I
well
would. Yeah. Okay.
actually. Yeah, it supports really all tiled features pretty much, and it's basically you put your tiled maps in the Unity project, and it turns them into assets that actually are Unity tile maps. And so you can then use it in your game, and you can turn objects into entities or game objects.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, what was your role at Ubisoft, where you were a game developer, just working like programming game features?
Like I did 5 years of just being UI programmer, implemented the UI framework in Lua, and then implemented the UI for the game 5 times because it kept changing. Implemented like a lot of animations in there and different transitions and all the menus and options and stuff. Yeah, the game was Champions of Anteria, which wasn't a great success, but the UI was pretty decent, I think. Though not as great as some of the work that was thrown away, basically.
Oh no.
Then I also did the early UI of Anno Online, which is, I don't think it's running anymore, but it was also very nice. I got to know Flex 4 and like ActionScript 3 or so. And I did the UI for Your Shape on the Wii U, also in Flash 2 actually. That was the most painful experience I had doing UI, because there were no feedback about any issues that the code was not working. Just had to iterate, and the iteration time was really long. Yeah, and then I did tool programming, so it was also a bit of UI, but for the developers of the game. I wrote an editor for game data, table-based editor, yeah, and made improvements to the node editor and UI framework. And then I worked on the logic for NPC animations. So they try to navigate their way around the world, and the AI team makes a path, and then we had to follow this path and play the right animations. So we were between the animators and the AI, and trying to make the NPCs move nice through the world and make sure that network communication was minimal. Yeah, and also no lagging and stuff like this. So that's what I was working on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, UI is a pretty different world in some ways from like building game tools. But I mean, I guess when you think about it, what tiled essentially is just a bunch of UI and a bunch of reading files and writing the files. So
Yeah,
I'm sure there's got to be some
I like UI
transferable knowledge there for sure. Some
Yeah.
valuable experience to go back and forth there.
because it's so visible. Like the UI is so much in the face, and I like well performing and smoothly animated UI, and it's great to work on this. Um, at Nokia, I was also doing some UI already with Qt Quick. It was a new framework they made for phones, basically to have better and apps support for Nokia phones. Like before they transitioned to Windows Phone and then died altogether. But yeah, they were trying their own thing based on Linux for a while, and having Qt on Symbian phones as well. And there was a UI framework which it did some stuff with as well. And to answer Arya JP, who's asking if they're using HTML and CSS, I think yes and no. There's many things. There's of course it's very attractive to just put a browser engine in front of the game and to stuff in HTML, CSS, but you have to know that games are incredibly performance sensitive, and HTML, CSS is a huge abstraction on top of the actual rendering, which is very hard to make very fast. So no, we were not using that. We had our own very lightweight C++ UI backend, which was for handling input and rendering the images. And then in Lua, we would modify that hierarchy of widgets, but it could render it while we were making further modifications, because it was making like a copy, a buffer somewhere. It was very fast to render, especially when we were not changing anything. And of course, we had an in-game store, and then the store is too complicated and had to be so dynamic that they embedded the browser just for when you open the store. And it was very slow, and yeah, at the time at least, this was like 8 years ago. And eventually they dropped the store because the game was no longer a free-to-play game. But anyway, this is like how decision-making is sometimes messed up.
I feel like nobody is ever like absolutely thrilled about having to embed a browser at any time. I feel like that's never a super exciting conversation.
Yeah,
I definitely know
think
that feeling where it's like, oh, need to implement feature in mobile application, but not feasible.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, a web developer is cheaper. That's what I got told, at least. So that would be also one reason to
Yeah,
to switch to HTML.
that makes sense. Yeah.
But I think it will not really pay off.
Yeah, I mean JavaScript is it's the popular one for sure. I mean that must have influenced your decision, right? I mean, including
Yeah.
JavaScript as your scripting language, and you even have like a JavaScript export for Tiled, don't you? As well.
Yes, that was from the time before you would just load a JSON file. So now if you make an online game, I think if you load the map dynamically, you would just request a JSON file with HTML request.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, when I implemented JavaScript export, you needed to just href, or how do you call it, link to a JS file, have the browser
Right, yeah,
load, and it embeds a callback that you would get in your JavaScript that you know, this thing has been loaded. This is very old-fashioned technique, which probably could be dropped by now because it's confusing people.
yeah, it's a very old school type of. Pretty much like most modern JavaScript, TypeScript developers probably would just use the JSON.
Yeah.
Is that what influenced your decision to use JavaScript though? Did you choose it because it's popular?
At the time, there wasn't really a thing to request additional files using JavaScript. You would just, some people would at least just embed, like this was a thing to have a JavaScript file with a callback that would get called when it was loaded. So yeah, so this was a way to embed the map in an HTML file.
Yeah, but how about for like the actions and the tools though? Like why JavaScript? Why not why not anything else?
That was eventually just decided on JavaScript because Qt shipped with a JavaScript engine anyway.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't know that.
the JavaScript API just made the most sense. I would have considered Lua as well, and I considered Ren, which is a scripting language which is not very well known, but I thought it was interesting. It's like Lua, but with classes. But in the end, I decided to just go with JavaScript because it's the one that ships with Qt. And I would like to make a new version of Tiled based on Qt Quick as well. Then the whole UI will also run on the JavaScript engine. So it would just have made sense to use JavaScript for the API.
Right, yeah, and it is just you, right? You don't have like employees or do you pay people to work on Tiled ever?
Well, I've tried, but it's only with limited success. I think I could try it more too, but I've just been setting some bounties on issues sometimes.
Yeah.
And there have been people who also took the bait basically and decided to work on something. So yeah, it's nice. I have to find ways to encourage people to work on Tiled more, right? So because I don't really like to work alone on Tiled, and that's also why if somebody opens a pull request, it's really motivating for me to help finish a certain feature. Yeah, but most people are just just using Tiled, right? And they have enough to do on their own projects, so not many people would start coding on Tiled. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's like if you're using Tiled, you're probably using Tiled to save you time. So
Yeah.
if you want a feature in Tiled and you're putting in a pull request because you use Tiled, you must really want that feature. You must really want that feature.
And it used to be easier. I think there used to be more people, at least it feels that way, that contribute to Tiled in the past, when Tiled was smaller, right? Tiled has only been growing and growing, and adding a feature is becoming more complicated. And it's off-putting, I think, for a new contributor.
Yeah, does make it tough. It is nice. I mean, what I really appreciate about open source software, it's like there's no popular libraries that I contribute to at all. Even Tiled or any of the other things that I use in my projects, I'm not actively contributing to any of them. But I really appreciate the fact that they are open source, because if I needed to, I could. If there was a bug with Tiled tomorrow, or if I decided tomorrow I need this feature or I'm gonna die, my project is gonna be canceled, I have the option. I'm not completely out of luck there, and I think that's what a lot of people really appreciate. Even the people that don't necessarily have any plans to contribute anytime soon. It's the reassurance, the security that they could if they needed to.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's great about open source that you actually get to meet the people behind it very easily. Like when I was in university, I also visited Vosdem. It's in Belgium, so it was just from the Netherlands, drive down a few hours. And I got to meet up with developers of the GIMP or Inkscape and the libxml2. I met all these. And it's like you really feel like, whoa, this is the guys, or this guy made this tool, right? Which I was using all the time. And that's a great experience. And I've also met, of course, people that are like, whoa, you're the guy who made Tiled? Yes, it's me. And it's really, it's a crazy feeling, actually, a strange way, and it wouldn't happen with most commercial tools where like, they're closed. You can't see behind their interface, and it's usually hard to reach the developers. I think maybe it's easier now, but for some small companies. But yeah, the bigger those companies become, the more protected they are behind their PR and support people. So yeah.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That's really cool. Do you have any core contributors, or are there people that you work with on Tiled a lot, very often?
There is some returning contributors, but there is no consistent contributors. No.
There's nobody else like reviewing pull requests, right?
No, that not. Yeah, I would like to have somebody else, but there's just nobody so attached to it, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you get a lot of different people with a lot of different needs. Most of them are probably, with the interest of their own specific game or project in mind.
Yeah.
It is cool though that even though you don't have core contributors, you have at least had, a lot of random help here and there.
There is at least on the Discord. So before I had an IRC channel, it has never been really active because it's not so accessible. And then I set up a forum, which was a bit better, I think, for some people. But once I set up the Discord, I started to see a lot more activity from people using Tiled, right? And they were chatting with each other on Discord. And there are a few people who are consistently there, almost. That is nice as well. So they're not developing Tiled, but some of them are writing scripts and or helping others out. Like there are some people who know super Tiled to Unity very well, or they know scripting very well, or auto mapping. And then other people can always come to Discord and ask questions. And even if I'm not there, there's usually somebody who knows the answer. So shout out to Aishia, who is also on the chat now. So they are really helpful to other people.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's a really good feeling when you're able to actually like foster a community like that, and it really feels like an actual community. Not just people that want the same software, but people actually hanging out and actively engaging. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the prepared questions I had for you. I guess the last question I would have for you would just be, what is the future of Tiled? What are your goals moving forward?
Oh no. Yeah, there's just there's a lot of open issues, so I try to improve Tiled where it is at the moment like the most painful. So this is like I want to make Tiled simpler to use while still making it also more powerful, right? And that is the hopefully what I would achieve, having to now to have more time for Tiled, to make things more consistent, but still to also add more features. So that's what I would like to do. Like there's always like aspects of Tiled which I don't like, which is clear that needs to be different. What I'm doing like for the next release, it's usually based on what I feel like is coming up the most. So in the Discord, there's people struggling with it. So what people are struggling with at the moment, I think, are the auto mapping feature. That's why on the next release I try to focus on this. It's become a lot more powerful, but maybe still not really easy to use, right? So I have to still do some work there. And then the projects, the workflow there is a bit confusing. The way I set them up as being completely something optional. I based it on Sublime Text, which is a text editor where also, of course, projects are optional and you can create them after the fact and stuff. And for tiled, this workflow is not ideal. Many people are looking for the new project action, which isn't there. So that's like the most confusing part, I think, which I want to fix. Yeah, and actually, I would like to make a new renderer. So at the moment, tiled is still basically software renderer based. But if there could be a hardware renderer, which of course can be implemented, there can be many more new features and more flexibility in what you do with your map. And with the flexibility, I also have to simplify the export. It's too complicated. It's getting more and more complicated to use a tiled map in a game, and the engines are often out of date. And this is a problem I want to improve by implementing export of the visual data in standard formats. So I'm thinking about GLTF, for example, which can represent the visuals of a map and then a JSON file with the logic of a map. Yeah, that way we could add more flexibility and actually make it easier to use the tiled map.
Sounds like you've got a lot on your plate here. You got some big plans. Yeah. And you're still loving it, you know? You're having an enjoyable time working on it day to day. Do you get bored?
Yeah, it doesn't really get boring. But I would like to do also something else. Like I said, I want to also get back a bit into game development.
Right.
Also, use the tool more myself. And also I would like to write a new UI. I started to write a Qt Quick based, like hardware rendering based UI long time ago already. But I'm not sure, and it could also work on mobile. But then I'm not sure if I will ever have get around to this. It keeps being pushed to the next year, and with other priorities.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, hey Bjorn, thank you again so much for joining us here today, donating your time. I'm a huge fan of the project. It's served me really well. I think a lot of people in my community really appreciate it. I mean, I know firsthand, just a lot of my friends and stuff have used it too. You know, it's the go-to. It's always in the conversation. And of course, thank you to the sponsor of this podcast as well, Covalence, the programming school that I went to. Thank you for anybody who joined us here to listen in on this interview. And I'll just say check out Tiled. Check out it's mapeditor.org, and you can find Bjorn's Patreon and all his social media from that link as well. And it's been really great. Thank you so much, everybody.